9.0.5 coming on Tuesday, officially confirmed with the reset. But there's something that's drawing a lot of conversation. Just want to make a quick video, mostly to have a place to discuss it. Interested in hearing some of your thoughts. This would be it right here. Mythic Keystone Dungeons, the formula for determining the level of the first Keystone the player receives each week has been adjusted. Previously, players always would receive a Keystone one level below the highest they completed so far in Season 1. After this change, Keystone level will continue to decrease by 1 per week until players again complete a higher level Keystone. For example, a player who completes a level 15 Keystone will receive a 14 the following week. If they do not complete a 15 or higher that week, they will receive a 13 the week after. So let's go down a little journey. In BFA, this worked this way the entire time. From my knowledge, I don't remember it ever not working that way for like a point of like an actual season, right? In Legion, it was actually even worse. In Legion, it was 3 lower, so I'd have to do an 18 just to get a 15 the following week. And I assume it worked the same way, whereas if I just didn't do any keys, it would decay 1. But since it was the 3 level gap, that would be really hard to even remember. So that's how it used to work. And then BFA, they made a 1, and I think that was just a commitment to let's make keys more about upgrading them a single time instead of in Legion, it was like you upgrade keys like 3 or 4, or 2 or 3 times very often, you know. So anyway, this has caused a lot of people some confusion. So I want to have a place to discuss this. I want to give my thoughts on this. So first of all, the way it was, by the way, if you don't fully understand, was it's like if I did it 20 the first week of the season, I'd have a 19 every single week forever. And it's like, okay, that's cool. That's really nice. It's like a cool quality of life thing, right? It's like, oh, well, I didn't succeed last week, so I should maybe not get punished for that. I tried, but I didn't succeed, whatever. I don't know. So people are like, oh, this change sucks. I can't believe they're doing this. But from my perspective, this was just a bug. In fact, like I've been talking about this a lot on stream for a while now, and it's, to me, clearly this is not how it's supposed to work. Like, so does anybody actually think that they did this on purpose and now they're just changing it back? Like I the reason I'm making this video is because something I'm about to show you, but to me, like they made no effort to discuss this. Like it wasn't ever brought up like, oh, we're changing this. We hope it will work out. They're changing in the middle of a season. It's like, what? That's a pretty aggressive thing to do, right? In the middle of the season, they're going to change this. And they're not even doing it in a hotfix. And there's been hotfixes for Mythic Plus for weeks and weeks and weeks, like literally probably 7 or 8 times now since they came out. And they're just changing it with this patch specifically. So to me, that tells me that this was a change that they could not address without an actual patch. And this is the first one of those. So to me, that seems really logical. But this guy in the forums, I don't know, not to make it about him, but he's basically saying like, no, this is an actual change. Like it wasn't a bug. It was intentional that they changed it. And they're now changing it back because they're idiots, basically. It's the only way I can understand it. Like, I can't understand anybody who thinks that they actually intentionally changed it to be that way for 13 weeks. And then suddenly they want to change it back. And they just happen to be doing that and coinciding with this patch. Like, not with last week's hotfixes that changed a bunch of stuff in Mythic Plus. No, this patch that's coming out on Tuesday. So I asked him to be specific about his point here because it was just this weird back and forth for a while. And he says they made a change to see how it would play out, being a 19 for the rest of the season if you did a 20. They didn't like how it played out, probably because it offered less engagement than they wanted. So now they changed it back, pure and simple. So first of all, they don't make things that are there's no pure and simple about this game, sadly. It's always a complicated topic, I'm sure, for them. But like, okay, so that's great. And then I said, so even though everybody could see that this was going to make people like, because the people that are complaining about it are basically saying like, I don't want to do keys on bad weeks. So before I was able to not do progression keys on bad weeks and then still be back at my progression point for good weeks. And like the kind of like circular criticism around that topic is that like there shouldn't even be bad weeks, and I can't believe how poorly they designed the system to make me not want to do it some weeks. It's like, yeah, but this is how it was forever, like literally. And the bad weeks are always going to exist no matter what they like. Honestly, I think that this 12-week rotation is the closest it's ever been. Like, I have a whole spreadsheet on Keystone stuff, and I struggle to find a week that's bad, honestly. I hate Necrotic, and they've made a bunch of changes to Necrotic, by the way, if you didn't see. Two of the hardest parts, the Gargans and the Brute Assassins, no longer give the Necrotic affix. I still don't like the affix. Like, it's, you know what I mean? It's not, that's fine. It's a lot more fair now. It's going to be a lot more balanced, but I'm still going to be the least happy I'll ever be when the Necrotic fixes out. But I still really like Mythic Plus, so I'm going to do some keys. Like, I'm not going to just not do any keys that week. So, like, to do no keys that are progression for a whole week and then be complaining about that, to me, it's like, you just don't really align with the system, right? You can't really be blaming Blizzard for this. This is very selfish of you to be doing this. It's like, people do 10 keys a week on 5 characters, right? But you can't even be asked to log in. You can't do a single key on Necrotic week just to not, I guess you'd have to do 2, right? You have to do your 14, upgrade that, and get a 15 again, which is what this guy says his point of progression is. He's trying to get Keystone Master, and he refuses to do it on, like, basically non-push weeks. But from what I could tell, he won't play on Grievous or Grievous or Necrotic. So that's 4 out of 12 possible weeks, and 2 of those weeks come back to back. So I was like, yeah, you're really shooting yourself in the foot here. But regardless of that, I just struggle to believe that anybody legitimately thinks that this is an intentional change. So I'd be very interested in hearing what your thoughts were, because then I said that, and then he's like, basically seemingly completely missing my point. He says, everyone aside from a handful counted it as a positive change, and now there's an extremely negative reaction to them changing it back. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying that, like, if the point of them changing it in the first place was to see how the community would react to it, I don't think anybody in their right mind would think that something other than people are going to manipulate this to not need to progress on push weeks, on non-push weeks, so they can progress on push weeks easier, would not be coming. Like, how could anybody think, like, there's 0% chance that would happen, so let's try it? Like, no, that's not what's going to happen. Blizzard's not going to think that. Like, they're never going to be that clueless. And I struggle with this a lot, especially on the forums. People are constantly, like, describing things as if the people who make this game have no fucking idea what they're talking about. And I think that is the most absurd thing. Like, it's so embarrassing. I feel like I lose all respect for anybody making that, honestly. I really do. And maybe others feel differently, but it's like, you really think the people who are making this game have that little clue? And in different topics have different, like, reactions. I understand, but this one, it's like, you trying to tell me that realistically Blizzard made a change without any concern, like, literally didn't even think about it. They did not even think about it effectively, right? Because to put this change in and then revert it 13 weeks later, they put no forethought into this. But that's fine. They were good with that. It wasn't an error, which is what I'm suggesting. They put no thought into it, and they're completely fine with that. Okay? And then somehow they just, what are we doing? I can't, I told you this was a bad idea, John. It's like, now they're changing it back 13 weeks later in the middle of a season that might not last. I mean, it might last for another 26 weeks instead of another 13, right? We don't know where we're at in the season. This is going to really impact things. Like, it's definitely a big change to the game, period, right? But and this, you think that this person thinks that they did all of this on purpose, that their mentality had somehow shifted in a way that they could not have predicted, right? Like, so, like, another example is like Keystone's dropping gear, right? That was intentional. It wasn't a bug. It didn't accidentally only drop 210 gear, and now they're like, oh, we need to fix that bug. Now it's going to be able to go to 220 gear with Valor, right? That's intentional. They thought 210 would work. It didn't. I don't know why they did, but it was intentional, right? So this, it's like, so you trying to apply that same logic to this concept. So they thought, like, oh, we should make it so no matter what key you do, you'll still get your highest seasonal progression point. Oh, but, Now people are accidentally getting keys that they didn't get credit for. They haven't played in 6 weeks. Oh, well, we never would have saw that coming. I'll have to change it back, but not in the hotfixes. No, this is a topic that requires a patch for proper. I mean, it just doesn't even make sense to me. I don't know, man. It's really bizarre. But yeah, I don't like. For me, what do I think of this? I literally don't care. I almost never do my own key anyway, and that's actually what I said to this guy. I was like, dude, you don't have to do your own key. Like, you can just, if you try to get 15s done, just pug into 15s, man. There's 15s out there that are not like, you'll get in eventually. And he's like, no, I only play with a set group of 5 people. And none of them are gonna log on at all. They can't. Not one of them people could get a single key done on those weeks. They all cannot stand playing on Grievous or Necrotic. And he's like, we only play 2 or 3 hours a week as it is. So none of us want to play when it's not worth our time. So I'm like, well, then you probably don't really like this content, because this is about constant progression. Like, you can't just take 2 weeks off and be like, I aligned with this system. This is I'm doing my best here. It's like, anyway, so I'm interested in hearing your thoughts, but obviously it was a bug. Yeah, I'm going with it's a bug. Okay, and other, like, the point that he's bringing up is like, apparently somewhere on these patch notes, I don't know where, they're talking about actual bugs. I don't know where that would be, because I don't see that anywhere. Like, he's saying that there's a section that's dedicated to fixing things that were errors, but I don't see that anywhere on here, and I've read all of these patch notes, so I must have missed something. But yeah, regardless, but one other thing I want to bring up here, okay? And one thing, I think this is an important perspective, okay? So in Battle for Azeroth, there's actually 2 key bugs with BFA, the first season of Keys, okay? Out of the gate, the biggest one was that you got credit for Legion. So you did a 20, like, I think Faxi did like a 22 or 24 something like that in Legion. He got like a 20 whatever it would have been in BF, like, because a couple weeks had passed regardless. I think it was like 3 weeks had passed regardless, so it would have been like a 19 or 20 or something like that in BFA. When you're like in blues, you got a 20. So then he had to lower it so many times that he literally couldn't do the key because it had the reset lock. Then he had to do it again, and he was in the same boat. So it's like pretty big bug, okay? Obviously not an intentional change. They came out and said that that's not, they're not going to let that happen again in Shadowlands, okay? But there was another one that I don't know how many people remember, and I asked this poster as well. He doesn't seem to remember it. Surprising to me. There was a bug where you could delete your Keystone, okay? Or something that I don't think anybody would consider an intentional circumstance in the game, okay? Because that's not what it was, obviously. You should not be able to delete your Keystone. It normally is never, like, that's not how it works. But you can delete it and then start the whole acquiring your first week's Keystone again. Obviously, the repercussions of that were very large, meaning you could delete a Keystone you didn't want, plug into a key that was higher, and immediately get your key higher without upgrading your own key. Also meant that you could change keys. And listen, I have a varying supply of ideas about how to fix this system and why Keystone downgrading sucks in the first place, why random generation of the dungeon on the Keystone sucks. I personally feel like no key should ever downgrade unless you wanted to downgrade. And we can go on. That's a whole nother video. I've actually already made that video, so if you want to check it out, it's out there. But that was a pretty severe issue, and they fixed it in a patch couple weeks, probably a couple months into the season, just like this. So to me, this is the exact same circumstance. Some bug that for some reason they didn't catch, and they're unable to fix it in a patch. Like, because that's the crux of this. It's like, if you believe that they wanted to change this for a while now, why are they doing it in a patch and not in one of the 7 weeks of hotfixes that they had? Like, you know what I mean? So I just don't. And then if it's not a bug and it's an intentional change, why are they doing it in the middle of the season, right? Like, to me, that says urgency. There's no other changes about Mythic Plus Keystone's like systematic progression. It's just that. It's like, that's an urgent fix that they wanted to make. They couldn't make it with a hotfix. Clearly not working as intended for whatever reason, bug, some kind of error of some sort. I don't know, but I don't know. So let me know what you think.